Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel and welcome back. My name is Sarita. We have a single candle review. I have so many candles that I have burned over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And work has been crazy and I haven't gotten to reviewing them. So off camera, they are sitting here on this ledge. But I thought that this was the best one to start out with because it is currently available in the semi-annual Bath & Body Works sale, and it is Anna's Garden right here. So this, and if you've been on my channel for some time, you're probably sick to death of me plugging and promoting this Black History Month collection that came out in February, was it? February, March, something like that. This was the Black History collection / designer collection. So it was not only featuring a designer, which in this case is Gwen Gonzalez, and designer of the actual aesthetic here, which is Katria Judkins, but they both identify as African American, and this was a Black History Month push. I love the whole concept of the designers, of the designer collections, and they've only been doing it for like a couple years. We see them sometimes when there are various different like ethnic months that are having kind of a moment. So we just got the Asian American and South Pacific Islander month. That collection was very disappointing, also in the semi-annual sale, but unfortunately I can't recommend really any candles in that collection with the exception of maybe the sesame one. The sesame one, if you're a gourmandy person, I think actually would be a fine candle to purchase. I can't recommend any of the other ones, unfortunately. So sometimes we see them in conjunction with kind of one of those ethnic awareness kind of history months. Sometimes we just see them as like a standalone designer collection when Bath & Body Works just gets a bee in their bonnet and they really want to really give kind of like a snapshot or a highlight specific designers that they have for specific fragrances, many of which are fragrances that have already been in their collection a very long time and have a following. We just didn't know the designer behind them. So I am, in theory, whether it is kind of like an ethnic moment or whether or not it's just standalone designers for no other reason except that they designed a really great fragrance that has been in the fleet for a while and they deserve recognition. Either way, I'm a huge fan. Unfortunately, it's been kind of hit or miss in terms of what collections have landed, which ones have been successful, and which ones haven't. We have seen some really new candles come out in some of those collections. Sometimes they're not all new candles. In this case, they actually all were new candles, which was so fantastic. I'm a huge fan regardless. This was a designer collection that landed, and for my money was the best designer collection that we've actually had up to this point, and they were all 4 brand new candles and landed fantastic. Caveat being that the one that I can't speak to is the one gourmand in the collection, which was My Sweet Sisters, I believe, and it was kind of an ombre pink packaging. That candle was like a chocolate hazelnut kind of candle. I don't do gourmand, so I can't speak to it. It seemed like a fine gourmand candle. However, objectively, I don't know that the gourmand folks really loved it all that much. And I really can't speak to how well that one did. For me, it seemed as though objectively it was kind of the weak link of the 4, but because I'm not a gourmand person, like I really have to kind of withhold my judgment on that one because I don't know what I'm talking about at all, so don't take my word for it. The other 3 were fantastic. I mean, I'm prepared to say this is probably the best mini collection that Bath & Body Works has put out for this first half of the year. And at least one of them is probably deserving of Best New Candle status, and that is not actually Anna's Garden. It was this one, which is Gwen's Note. I went ahead and picked up 2 of these in semi-annual. By the way, these are I think they're $10.99 or whatever that price point is, or whatever the current semi-annual price point is going for. I believe they're $10.99. So, and there should be a good amount of them at all the stores that I've gone to. There's been a good amount. I mean, not like an embarrassing amount, which is always indicative of not doing particularly well. They didn't land well. They weren't great candles. So there's not an embarrassing volume of them, but there's a good amount of them because in many ways this collection was very underhyped and under appreciated, I think, especially given how amazing these candles were. This one was the best of the collection. Give it a smell. Please give it a smell too if you initially smelled it and passed on it because it smelled really bad. I agree with you. It did smell Gwen's note smelled terrible in its initial pour. I think there was a lid issue. You know how there was like the fish lids at one point? I think there was a lid issue with this one and it smelled terrible. Like super like burned, kind of plasticky. Like it was not a good smell at all. Their second, they've re-poured them though. So these pours now smell authentic. They smell fantastic. There's no lid issues. So at the very least, if you're in the store for semi-annual, definitely give it a smell and see if it's your jam. This one is sandalwood, lavender, and sage, and it is so beautiful. It's a gorgeous conceptual that I think a lot of people can get on board with, even if you're not necessarily a lavender or herbal person. It's got a great, like, soft, creamy kind of component to it. So really highly recommend this one, and I think it's a best new candle. But I'm hijacking the video. This is actually about Anna's Garden, which is also quite good. I like this ombre. We've talked about the packaging. Unfortunately, the seam is super obvious. And they've locked themselves into this like ridiculous like block label, like a PowerPoint that has way too many words on it. And I've been told from my friends up in Canada that the Canadian label has everything in French and English. So can you imagine what that label looks like? Craziness and insanity. I also think that if these candles come back, which they 100% should, that unfortunately the names of these fragrances have they're just very, they need a lot of explanation. Why is this Anna's Garden? Who is Anna? Or in this case with Gwen's note, like who is Gwen? Why is Gwen writing a note? In this case, she's not writing a note at all. What she means by note is that it's her fragrance note that she likes the best, which in this case is sandalwood. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't have the PowerPoint, if you know what I mean. So I do think that going forward, I would really like to see these maybe repackaged and remarketed so that the concept, I think, just recommends itself a little bit more to a general audience without the PowerPoint, if that makes sense. And it could have been part of the reason why they were underhyped and underwhelming for a lot of people. Okay, so this one is Anna's Garden. Gwen says that this is a tribute to her mom, who I assume her name is Anna, whose flower gardens always made us feel at home wherever we were. So this is her mom's garden. Her mom's name is Anna. And the notes on Anna's Garden are orange blossom, white tea, and jasmine musk. And really on paper, that should be a slam dunk. Bath & Body Works does the white florals very well, and whenever they say they say that they're including a white tea note, which all things being equal should not be that pronounced of a note. That's a real subtle fragrance note, but usually when they make a big deal or they write it down as a note in a candle, it is possibly more of a fantasy note that for Bath & Body Works usually means that it's a little bit on the herbal side, a little bit on the like austere side. It has some sort of spa-like note, etc., whether there's actually white tea in it or not. And there are a lot of white tea candles at Bath & Body Works that do very well and have quite a following, as well as jasmine, as well as musk, as well as orange blossom. Unfortunately, this half year, we had a million white florals from Bath & Body Works, which I appreciate. We were definitely in the botanical and herbal era for Bath & Body Works. I can't even remember a time where there were that many really like fairly authentic white florals and botanicals and herbals than we have had in this last 6 months. So if that is your genre, you have definitely been in luck. If you're not that genre, you are not in luck. And I've said this, although I'm not a gourmand person, I actually think that Bath & Body Works could have done a few more gourmands in the last 6 months. And I think that that would have gone a long way to improving their reception. We have had a lot of really weak and light candles, but the gourmands tend to be fairly loud. So not only would we have had a better chance of, I think, some louder candles if there had been more gourmands, but I do think that gourmands is still a very traditional and important aspect of Bath & Body Works culture. And even though consumer tastes, I think, are changing, and to some extent, I think turning away from gourmands, at least in a traditional sense, it doesn't mean that straight up, like, fairly basic gourmands shouldn't still be a really big aspect of whatever is on the floor at Bath & Body Works at any given time. All right, so close parentheses on that. I do think that as strong as these notes are and as appropriate they are as they were in this era that we've had over the last 6 months of white florals and fairly subtle and authentic ones, unfortunately, because there were so many, that also kind of militated against this candle getting the kind of audience that perhaps it should have. There were just so many other competing white florals on the floor, many of them with like flashier packaging. So, Orange Blossom White Tea and Jasmine Musk. This candle is a lot of orange blossom, like a lot. In fact, I would say that that's its dominant note, and it's really beautiful. I would say that on cold, it goes a little bit more orange blossom, and when burned, it goes a little bit more neroli. So if you're not familiar, and I'm not like a huge like expert botanically, but my understanding is that orange blossom and neroli are actually the same thing on a certain level, i.e. they come from the same tree and they're both the same blossom. It just has to do with the difference of extracting the fragrance. So orange blossom, and I could have gotten this wrong, but orange blossom I think has to do with a distillation that has more to do, it at least smells more like the blossom itself, whereas neroli is a certain kind of extraction of the oils and the fragrance of the plant and of the blossom that has much more of a refined oil kind of smell to it, but it's the same organism. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. For my nose, neroli is included in a lot of sunscreens, for instance. It has like kind of for us, a beachy association. And while it is an orange blossom, for me, it goes a little bit brassy, which is to say that it's kind of like, it's a little high pitched and it's a little bit like, we would say solar smelling, like the sun. It's a little bit, I don't know, other than the word brassy, which I use all the time, it's up in the upper registers, and if there was a color for it, it would be yellow or orange. There's almost a flatness and a warmness about that particular fragrance, and for me a little less authentically floral than it is like an essential oil smelling. I don't know. This is too much, and I know we've like gotten into the weeds here, but at any rate, what I'm trying to say is that upon smelling it, I get like a very fresh, botanical, pollinated kind of blossom, orange blossom smell. When I burn it though, it just goes a touch brassy and a touch like essential oil as opposed to floral, if that makes sense. Just a tiny bit more like sunscreenish than I would like for it to be, if that makes sense. I prefer more of a stripped down, botanical floral rather than that kind of like neroli essential oil. And so for me, I didn't enjoy this quite as much burned as I did smelling it. But it's a really mild attraction, and it has to do with my own personal preference rather than like anything that objectively is wrong with the fragrance. Very loud on the orange blossom slash neroli. Yes, there is jasmine in it, but I actually think that the jasmine, the main inclusion in terms of the fragrance contribution here with the jasmine, is that it's giving this like black pepper like pop to it. Yeah? Which I think is fantastic. Jasmine can sometimes do that, right? Gardenia even sometimes. Like they're those really aggressive, deep, kind of musky white florals. And jasmine especially goes like kind of in a black pepper direction. And I love that because I do think it cuts some of the sweetness and some of that really heady white floralness. Yeah? And I love the way that black pepper is cutting the orange blossom here. Unfortunately, and I would say that's a lot of the fragrance here. If you're smelling it on cold, you're getting mainly orange blossom and then this amazing black pepperness kind of right at its base that's cutting it and making it less sweet. And then this kind of like vague green botanical behind it. And that might be the quote unquote white tea aspect of it, which can be a little bit floral, a little bit grassy, etc. I think there is some sort of like kind of grassy green leaf aspect to this, but much quieter than like the black pepper and the orange blossom. Upon it being burned, the orange blossom not only goes a little bit neroli, but unfortunately, I think the black pepper and definitely the green botanical get lost underneath that neroli, which just starts, like I said, getting loud and brassy up in the upper register. Yeah? So that for me, the candle was a little bit less nuanced upon it being burned than you smell in the jar. And so for me personally, I would probably not repurchase this one just because I think there are a lot of candles that Bath & Body Works has that have neroli or that have a white floral dimension, etc., etc. And since I don't love neroli, I think I would probably not repurchase it, but it burned like a dream and it performed fantastic. This candle in the open concept was at least a 7.5. It really was. And then when I put it in the back bedroom, it was even more than a 7.5. And that neroli note is gonna go there. It's not shy, it's very aggressive. So the strength and throw was quite good on it. And if you like orange blossom neroli, even a little bit of a floral sunscreen vibe, this is fantastic, and I can't recommend it highly enough to you, especially going into the summer months. I can't think of a better white floral that kind of transitions you into the high summer. So if that's your jam, pick it up at $10.95. You're not going to be disappointed with strength, with throw, with authenticity, and yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. It really is. With my specific preferences, I probably wouldn't repurchase it. It just went a little bit too neroli for me. And I think that I was just kind of disappointed that some of those other softer elements didn't quite burn or amplify the way that I wanted them to. But super fantastic. Like 100% I recommend it, especially if you know that that's kind of your vibe. Gosh, you can do a whole lot worse, especially with the candles that Bath & Body Works gave us over the last 6 months. No question. Of the 4 of these, my favorite obviously is Gwen's Note. You, Me, and the Sea, I would say I'm going to put that at number 2 for me. You, Me, and the Sea, which I don't actually have here because I don't have a backup of it yet. I will probably pick one up if I see it here in semi-annual at some point, a rainy day in June, if you know what I mean. You, Me, and the Sea is a beautiful, like kind of herbal aquatic. It's beautiful, but it's not so niche or too sophisticated in its herbal aquatic nature that it can't still be really appreciated by a pretty general audience. So again, even if you're not really an herbal person, definitely check out You, Me, and the Sea. Again, that would make an amazing amazing transition into the summer months where we're thinking about the ocean, and this one is like really perfect. Honestly, the 3 candles here are extremely versatile candles in terms of seasons and in terms of when you would want to burn them, you know, in terms of your vibe, whatever else. And it's just another reason that makes these 3 candles really a standout for me and an extremely successful designer collection. Extremely successful 3 new candles, even where they're a little bit basic, especially with Anna's Garden. Definitely ones that I want to see Bath & Body Works keep around in their fleet. And I hope that they do. Like I said, I think they probably need new names. I think they need new marketing for sure. But get in on the ground level right now at $10.95, if you know what I mean. When this candle comes back, you'll say, this is a repackage, and I got this in its original iteration when it was called Anna's Garden or Yumi in the Sea. Yumi in the Sea might be able to carry fine. They might be able to keep that one fine because you don't need like a PowerPoint for that particular one. All right, that's what I've got for you. I'll link all the information down below. What the heck, for all of them. I will link them down below. But like I said, you should see them in your semi-annual sale. Almost every Bath & Body Works I've gone to lately has still had several, at least of the 3. Now, the Sweet Sisters, I've seen in some places and not in others. It was the one gourmand of the collection, and for that reason alone, I think got a little bit more buzz and sold out with greater frequency than the other 3. But for my money, it's the other 3 that are the best ones. So you really can't go wrong with any of those 3. Pick them up. What are you waiting for? I'll see you guys in the next one.